Okay, just while Nada's doing that, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this month's QSI First Thursday Club CPD. Today we have Nada Deu of Wintec with us, and she's going to be talking to us about all things to do with Gateway 2 compliance requirements. She's just getting up her presentation here now. Then
you all see my screen?
Yes, I can see that.
Perfect.
Yeah, Palmjeet, you got it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Yeah.
All good?
Okay,
Right.
so over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. It's nice meeting all of you, albeit online, but it's a great way to connect. So today's topic is about Building Safety Act. I'm sure a lot of you have heard quite a lot about it, but in different perspectives. I'm going to do my best to try and cater to the group that we have here. But if you have any questions, do feel free to jump in. Do feel free to ask. I'm happy to take questions in between if it helps. I have no issues with that. So just a bit about myself. I'm Nada Dawud. I joined as a facade consultant. I've been in this industry as a facade consultant since 2007. I joined Wintec 12, 13 years ago, and I've been with them ever since. Last couple of years, I have set up and headed the expert witness division, which is doing good. But as most of you would be aware, Wintec has built quite a trust in the industry within the construction sector. So it was easier to build upon that trust in terms of offering expert witness services. The good thing about it is also the connections that we forged throughout the years. So Wintec has been around for 42 years. And last couple of years, we have had massive expansion. We have acquired 2 companies. And right now, while we started as a facade consultancy, we are right now a multidisciplinary with building services, structures, fire engineering, access and maintenance, and sustainability. That's a bit more of the same. We have offices in the following locations. For anybody who's interested or anybody wants to come in and have a chat, we have these locations. But otherwise, an email or a call will be great. Before I get into what Building Safety Act is, I think this is just a slide. I don't know, a lot of you would have come across this information on LinkedIn. So Cost Consultancy had a Freedom of Information request about what's exactly happening with the Gateway 2 submittals for both new build and refurbishments. So as you can see, 81% of the applications submitted, there has been no news about it. 20 applications have been approved, 20 rejected, 4 not validated, which is basically giving a picture of that 81% of the applications are in limbo. No one knows what's happening. 9% approved, 8% rejected, 2% not validated. A very small percentage is being approved, but that is new build because the focus, you would think because the focus is on refurbishment, new build is, taking a hit. Fair enough. But if you actually look at the refurbishment data or the existing building data, the amount of applications that have been submitted are 2,049 versus 187 new build, which is showing the, industry itself. Out of that, 14% have been approved, 7% rejected, and 3% not validated. That is still a stark difference between what's being submitted and what's been approved. But I really don't think we need to get into too much of that. I mean, everybody's talking about it in the industry right now. So there's a lot of information online, a lot of frustration, rightly so. Last couple of days, there's been a lot of news that the fire brigades have been appointed to look after the BSR. They're running legislation to fast track. Although they're saying all that, the frustration in the industry is still that they're not getting the appropriate or the right kind of people to process these applications. And, if anybody has a difference of opinion, it'd be really good to hear. Building Safety Act, everybody knows about it in various aspects. So it is a regulation framework that was passed after Grenfell. The overarching requirement is safety, structural safety and fire safety. Contrary to what people think, Building Safety Act does not just apply to high-risk buildings, it applies to everything that's built, except a few very small percentage where they have exclusions, that's there in the legislation. So it not just covers planning, design, and construction. It also covers legislation for the individuals undertaking the work, the safety cases. It establishes a requirement that every building needs to have relevant information for the building and the certification. So if you do remember, prior to Grenfell, even after Grenfell, building control was approving a lot of buildings. Now, when we go back and do a lot of surveys or refurbishment, acquisition, vendor, any kind of surveys, safety surveys, we're seeing that the building control has approved a lot of applications or signed off and handed the building over. But then when you actually see there's a lot of non-compliance with it, they do not have liability. So this Safety Act, to some extent, wants to protect the client or protect the owners or the developers from that kind of behavior. And rightly so, it is heading in the right direction, but there's a lot of work to be done. So this slide is quite important for even for QS, because previously, traditionally, a design and build contract, however, whatever contract process you wanted to go through, we were seeing a stage where consultants were appointed in, say, stage 2, stage 3. Tender was going out at the end of stage 4. And then stage 5, the contractor gives out the information or starts producing details, and we are building along with the drawings being produced. So which means that all the appointments of the contractor and main contractor was being pushed probably to end of stage 4, beginning of stage 5 tender. Last couple of years, we saw that changing a bit, where some of the clients decided that let's have a contractor on board during stage 4 to try and get a handle on costs. Now, with Building Safety Act and with the advent of Gateway 2, it became critical and it became legislation for HRBs to have the main contractor appointed. So principal contractor and the principal designer. In most cases, in a new build or even refurbishment where there are architects, the principal designer under the BSA is the architect and principal contractor is the main contractor. So we saw a change in the industry where the contractors were beginning to be appointed in stage 3, stage 4. And this is becoming more common now because there's no other way out. Now, in terms of stage 3, stage 4, once again, as consultants, we saw a bit of a difference. So there are clients who come. There are two ways that WinTech work, and I'm sure a lot of other companies, consultancies work this way as well. So one is we support the PCSA arrangement where you're getting your contractor, say, middle of stage 3 or beginning of stage 4. We work with the contractors throughout stage 4. We produce a good package for Gateway 2, or we help produce or assist in the production, and then it gets submitted for Gateway 2, and then everybody waits. It's a waiting game after that till we get the approval. The other option that clients also prefer is, we do a 75%, 80% design, and I'm going to get into the details because as QSs, it's quite important to understand the extent of details. Getting into 75% design where the consultant does most of the design, and then we do the Gateway 2 package and the client submits it. Now, advantages, disadvantages. Advantage of having a PCSA is you get a better handle on costs. And you know that what the contractor is producing is what they're likely to install with more certainty. The disadvantage, you lose the benefit of a competitive tender. You go with the PCSA and you most likely have to go with the same contractor post Gateway 2. Advantage of 75% design is you get a lot more done. You get a complete holistic package. Disadvantage is when you do go out for a competitive tender after Gateway 2, there is a slight possibility that some of the contractors may not prefer a full design, may not be able to do the similar kind of design that the consultant has produced. So they have to make changes, which may lead to change notifications and a bit more of a delay. Pros and cons, it depends on the client. It depends what you want out, any client wants out of their project ultimately. So there are multiple ways of working right now, but the bottom line is a lot of the instructions that a lot of the contracts that were being done after stage 4 is being advanced to stage 3, which means a lot of clients needs to have the money or the cost, spend the money upfront. Now, having said that, one is instructions, one is what is the level of detail produced, because it ultimately impacts the PCSA fee. So what we're seeing is a varied feedback. But so Wintech have done a few gateway to submittals. We have had 3 approvals, an average timeline of 16 weeks, which is better than what the industry is facing. And in all those cases, what we have done is an 85% to a 90% design. The reason is, while we had a couple of meetings with the HSC and with Michael Go's team when he was in charge, and what we did get is, although they did not say this is the level of detail we need, the statement they made was, we need anything and everything that would demonstrate your compliance. So when you actually start reading into that statement, it's like, where do you draw the line? So what we did do is go through every functional requirement and see what needs to be produced to demonstrate that we are meeting the functional requirement, which led to a standard set of details, which worked around 80 to 85%. There are people who ask me, how did you come up with the figure of 85%? And this is the way we did it. So the overarching requirement of Gateway 2 is, it's not just about meeting functional requirements, it's demonstrating how you're meeting it. And that's the crucial bit. And that's where we get a lot of the queries from the BSR. And to be fair to say, when we get queries, we don't get time to address it. We get 2 days, and most of the time it comes on a Friday and we have to respond on Monday morning. This is the trend we're seeing, and a lot of you might have other experience as well. Key duty holders in BSA is the client, principal designer, principal contractor, 3 main people. Obviously, there's an entire team of designers and contractors below them, but ultimately, these 3 people are the main people responsible. The building regulations, or the BSA, brought out a different set of requirements for the principal designer and the principal contractor, which differed from CDM. So right now we need a principal designer and a principal contractor, both under CDM and both under BSA, or the building regulations, England. The requirements are totally different. Obviously, CDM, the focus is on health and safety, whereas the BSA the focus is on design and compliance with the building regs. The documents that needed to be produced, and this in a way relates to the extent of information that needs to be issued for Gateway 2, is the competence declaration, and that's not a straightforward signature because the client have to do their due diligence in checking every contractor, every designer that they appoint to make sure that they're all competent. A design and build approach document, which is separate to all your drawings and specifications and calculations, which states, or which is a narrative on how you are meeting, or demonstrating how you meet each functional requirement with reference back to the documents. And that's very important because the BSR in the first instance has a look at this document more than your details. The fire and emergency file, needless to say, we all know how important fire and structural safety information is. The construction control plan is the strategy for managing building work to maintain the compliance through design and through construction. Change control plan, setting out the procedure on how every change control is intimated and addressed, and how that goes back to all the documents that have been produced. Mandatory occurrence reporting framework, not just in construction stage, but it's also something that needs to be produced during construction, and once handed over post Gateway 3, the building team needs to keep an eye on and keep producing when defects arise. Now, mandatory occurrence reporting is extremely important. The reason is because this entire set of documentation that's produced, all your site visits, your mandatory occurrence reporting, etc., change controls, have to be submitted for Gateway 3 before they can release the building for occupancy. So it's extremely important that everybody's aware of the roles of mandatory occurrence. The correct instructions have been put in for the site visits. The correct consultants come in, the architect has a look, all of them have to sign at the end. So in a lot of cases previously, we saw that the architects didn't have much of a scope in the construction stage for them to come and have a look at the building. But that's not the case anymore. They do need to sign a declaration, which means they need a minimum number of site visits in addition to the consultants. The partial completion strategy is for clients who do maybe 10 buildings, who want to release building by building, complete and have occupancy set out. So it's partial completion strategy for big clients who have a master plan with 10 blocks, let's say. Now, site inspection during construction is extremely important because one feedback that we have been facing in the industry is that the fee for stage 3, stage 4 is similar to a lot of consultants, but they're finding that stage 5 is being increasingly expensive. And the reason for that is previously stage 5 is where a lot of the responsibility was handed over to the contractor. So if anything went wrong, you could go after the contractor. But now with the Building Safety Act, things have changed. Everybody is responsible for it, whether it's the designer, whether it's the architect, whether it's the client, or whether it's the contractor. Contractually, yes, the contract will be written, so the main contractor is responsible. But otherwise, everybody else starts getting responsible when the Building Safety Act kicks in. So which means that we need a stronger engagement between the team to ensure that whatever has been designed and approved in Gateway 2 is being constructed. Any changes are documented and approved. Any mandatory occurrence reporting, which means during construction, if there's something does go wrong, say fire stop, installation, etc., it gets raised and rectified, and that is documented. So the focus on construction state is way more right now after Building Safety Act, because everybody has a statutory requirement to sign the compliance certificate at the end, and that cannot be done without the focus on site inspections. The other thing is the BSR comes during site inspections and has a look at certain benchmarks, and they set out benchmarks which is to do with, say, foundation pours, fire stopping, the first cladding install, MEP, anything that's first and anything that's a benchmark and anything that impacts safety is something that they are really keen to come and have a look, and they expect everybody to do the same. Change control process, it is important. Well, in an ideal world, what gets submitted in Gateway 2, what gets approved in Gateway 2 is what should be constructed. There are certain instances where a change control is needed. It could be change of material, it could be change of scope, it could be a change in finance that has led to, say, removing a couple of floors or removing a couple of apartments, or looking at the layout, which means that once a change control notification goes in, there's a waiting time, because depending on the kind of change, whether it's a major change or a notifiable change, you either have to stop works or you continue at your own risk. So that needs to be looked in. So the more work you put in before Gateway 2, the more you get it right before Gateway 2, means the less impact you have on your program after. Because there's nothing worse than waiting for Gateway 2 approval, which is running 2 weeks right now, and then waiting another 12 weeks for a change control to get approved. So the more work and the more diligence you put in before Gateway 2 pays off after. List of major changes, certain building work where relates to installation of cladding, insulation, and fire breaks, changes to proposed fire strategy, changes in product where the specification has changed, change in proposed use, number of commercial units, number of apartments, change in height, layout, footprint, etc. All of that is a major change, and once you make that application, or once you apply, you cannot do any work till that's agreed. It is 6 weeks or longer. Some more of the major changes is changes to the structural design or loads, changes from the method of compliance. So when we do a design and build approach document, and we say this is the way we intend to demonstrate, and then we make a change to how we're demonstrating the compliance to functional requirement, that is a major change. Notifiable changes are small changes you carry on at your own risk, which is changes to the construction control plan. Those things happen. Changes to duty holders. Sometimes companies go bust, people leave, so we need to keep updating it. Changes to the strategies on how the client does work on site. Changes to the construction control plan, layout, how everything is constructed and installed on site, etc. The mandatory occurrence reporting is the one that I got into detail. It places duties on the principal designer and principal contractor, and principal designer is usually either the client during construction stage or the architect, after the building control approval application, to establish and operate an effective mandatory occurrence reporting framework or a system. And that framework needs to be submitted for your Gateway 2. You need to show them how it's going to be done. Enables those undertaking design work or building work to report safety occurrences within 10 days of it occurring. And it's a lot of paperwork, to be honest, and it's a lot of relationship building because if you have to apply or if you have to report every occurrence, then relationships are going to get fraught. So having that conversation, having that rapport with everybody in the team is extremely important. And it's not just important that you say things have gone wrong, but you also need to say how you're setting it right and how it's been done and how it has been completed and how you're making sure that it's not going to be repeated. So it's an entire circle for the right reasons, but it is a lot of work. And I think everybody needs to understand that. So Building Safety Act for a QS is a bit more critical, although everybody talks about the architect, everybody talks about the contractor, the designer, and we all talk about how many details we need to produce, etc., etc. But ultimately, it's very critical for the QS because it comes down to cost, because everything impacts the cost, and the cost is what you guys sort out for the client. So I think it's very important as QSs to understand the impact of every stage, the work involved from the architect, the designer, stage 2, stage 3, because all of that starts feeding into the cost. So I'm sure all of you would have seen a massive increase in construction costs and design costs and the design team building costs in the last couple of years after Grenfell. And I think there's going to be a lot more increases as people try and understand how the BSR operates. And that is BSA for you in short. I'm happy to take on questions because I think we learn a lot more when people speak about the experiences in the industry. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take. And I think it can be a good conversation. So that's me. If anybody wants to get in touch for anything, Palm is there as part of the group. So if you have any questions or anything that WinTech can help with, Palm, you can always get in touch with Palm. My details are here if I can help in any way. And that is WinTech.
Thank you, Nada. That was a very quick fly through of Gateway 2. Well done. Anyone have any questions? Put your hand up, put your microphone on, pop them in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with.
Will we get a copy of the presentation?
I send copies of the presentation for people who request it. So if you can either pop something in the chat now so that I just have it in writing, or you can send me an email at any time. So just if I'll just do this bit now before we start the questions. If anyone wants a copy of the slides or a CPD certificate, please pop something in the chat so that I have it, or you can send me an email, as I say, at any time. Thank you. Okay, so back to questions. Keith, you've got your hand up there. Fire away.
Yeah, yes, thank you for your presentation. I'm not sure it was more interesting or more terrifying, to be honest. But anyway, presumably this has really seriously affected PI insurance policies and PI insurance premiums, because people can now, because of all this signing off on things, I presume including the quantity surveyor, that means that they have much greater liability.
Correct. The liability is much more under the Building Safety Act, because when things go wrong, and from my work on construction disputes, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm seeing an increase in this because everybody is claiming under the Defective Premises Act, which means that for existing buildings, they're going back 30 years, or for new builds is 15 years. So the period of liability has increased. The liability has increased. The premiums are going up, no doubt. And everybody is more nervous signing off anything because they are worried about liability. And that's also the reason why the MDT, when I say MDT, is the multidisciplinary teams that the BSR employs, are taking time, because the moment they sign off something, so previously building control didn't have liability, they could sign anything and get away with it, and they have gotten away with it. But it's no longer the case. The BSR will be held responsible as well if anything goes through that's not correct. So which means that everybody is risk averse, which is leading to a lull in the industry, and the work is slowing down because people are reluctant to sign off things very quickly without doing the due diligence.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Thank you.
I just had one question regarding the documentation. I think it was on slide 12. You listed out response. I think there was a number of certain document mandatory, design competence, etc. Who's responsible for creating that? Is everyone involved have to do their own documentation, or
Yeah. So for the design and build approach document, the owner is the principal designer with everybody inputting into it because the structural engineer has to provide the input, MEP, facades, fire, etc. So everybody inputs into it, but the main controller is the principal designer. In terms of the change control notification and the mandatory occurrence framework, etc., all of the responsibility comes to the principal designer, but the overall responsibility lies with the client. So the client has to sign a letter saying that they are ultimately responsible. So which means that although they delegate the work to the principal designer who's going to set out, who's the author of all the documents, everything has to be produced in conjunction with the client. Because ultimately, the principal designer may be the architect, but the one managing the site might be the client or the main contractor. And in some cases, the main contractor is the client. So it's a shared ownership between the principal designer and the client / main contractor.
thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions before we close?
I have a question for everyone here. What has been your experience of the Building Safety Act in your professions? Because that's something we don't hear. We hear a lot of chatter about designers, clients losing money because they're playing the waiting game, etc. But I have had no quantity survey or a cost consultant saying this is the impact we've had. So it'd be really good to know what's your feedback from your experience.
From my point of view, I spend most of my time nowadays sitting as arbitration adjudicator to decide construction disputes, and so it hasn't really affected me yet, but it will do. Because I think the Building Safety Act is rather like BIM. Eventually, we're going to start getting disputes through on BIM, and there'll be disputes going through on the building related to the Building Safety Act and the things that you've been talking about and taking responsibility, because under the Construction Act, obviously, design is one of the things that's covered by construction. It's one of the it's included in the definition of construction contract, which means the Act applies. So you've got adjudication, and you've got payment terms and all the rest of it, which already exists for the architects and QSs as well, because surveying's also included. So I think there's great scope for future disputes and a big increase in the number of adjudications related to BIM and now the Building Safety Act as well. But are you, from doing all the training you're doing, are you convinced that people are actually geared up and fully conversant with what it is they've got to do and for what they are actually going to be responsible or not?
No. People are not geared up for it. People do not understand most of it. We have so off late, we're seeing an increase in building safety consultants who are issuing document templates to say fill it up. They are filling it up, but they don't really understand the reasoning behind it or why it needs to be done or how it needs to be done. There's a very small percentage who are aware of it, and they're the ones who are getting the approvals through. The ones who are not are the ones who are pushing back, saying, we don't need to do that level of detail. We don't need to provide that level of information right now. We have never done it before. Are the ones who are struggling with the approvals, are struggling to get anything through. So no, there's a lot of the industry needs to be educated a lot more, but it works two ways. I mean, there are people within the industry doing it, but we're not getting any feedback from the BSR or from the head to see to enable that.
Plus, because the client's ultimately responsible, there's an awful lot of, with the industry and the professions need to be educated, and then they need to educate, we need to educate our own clients.
Sure. And that's exactly what's happening.
And it seems to me that, I mean, I've gone to a lot of talks on this, and it seems to me that we're just walking into a sort of a high risk area with our eyes shut, to be honest.
But if you design something, if you design a building correctly with the right products in the right manner, with the right tolerances, with the right people with the competencies, you would manufacture correctly with the right supply chain, you QA manage that, it's been built within those tolerances, you install it correctly, you record it being installed correctly, then you shouldn't really worry. I know there's a lot of negativity in the industry, but if you go back to principles, we design it right, manufacture it right, install it right, you're not going to have a problem. And that's what the BSR is all about, getting people to think like that. Has everyone ever considered that?
Well,
not even the contractors. Yeah.
It's an interesting point you make, but the thing is, from my point of view as an adjudicator and an arbitrator, if everyone followed the contract and built things right, there wouldn't be any and paid on time as they have to do, then there wouldn't be any disputes. And you know, I'd be out of a job. But unfortunately, I'm not. And there's loads more. In the RICS, as an example, are about to put 60 more people, are looking to put 60 more people onto their panel of adjudicators to cope with the amount of work there is.
And coming back to your point, Rohit, you're making a very good point. That's the ideal world, and that's all we all aspire to. What we are noticing is what is the right thing to do on site is subjective. So I still have meetings. So I have worked in a project right from stage 2 to handover, a couple of developments, right? And what I do see and what are the conversations, what we feel is the right approach, the contractors sometimes dispute with it. So they do not see it as the right approach. So when they build it on site, ultimately, when you go back, they can still argue that they're compliant, and we can argue that they're not compliant. So what they see as right is, in most cases, not what the industry considers as right, or not what the Building Safety Act considers as right. It's quite stringent right now. It's got a lot more onerous. But I think, like you said, rightly, the BSA is pushing people to think in that way. And we have a long way to go, because a lot of money is involved. To get that kind of quality control and QA on site requires money. And from experience, there's a huge disconnect between the design team and the construction team. And the moment I walk on site, the first day I see the disconnect, because I have the best design team who can explain the detail on paper, have these meetings. And then I walk on site and the person installing it is completely different. And sometimes they don't even have the drawings with them, because they work off experience. And that's where the problem starts coming in.
Get the designers some tools, send them on site, tell them to go and build what they've designed. They'll soon learn they need to build tolerances.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments they'd like to add to the discussion?
Other than the 6 numbers for the lottery tomorrow? No, I'm fine, thank you.
I do
Yeah.
a comment. Just, it's really about our experience, I think, trying to work our way through a couple of PCSAs with main contractors to get to Gateway 2. And I think it's the little bit of there seems to be in the industry a little bit of uncertainty about what constitutes a good submission. You know, what we actually have, how much detail do we have to put in it? Because clearly, you know, previously, quite a lot of the detailing was conceptual, and you evolved your detailing and design almost through the construction process sometimes, and you know that obviously can't happen now. And it's the uncertainty of getting to that point where you know you have to have a certain amount of data to get you over the line, and if you don't do that, you go to the back of the queue. That's the kind of the impression, and I think there's quite a big uncertainty with a lot of our peers about really the whole process of how the regulator works, and is it good enough and robust enough and strong enough to get the number of applications through in time, and what happens if they don't? It's just that, you know, the effect on the whole construction process, it's going to slow it down unbelievably so. And I think we've found that already in contracts that we have, that there's been a stretching out of the design process, which, you know, all of the companies who are in subcontractors, as I am, we work on throughput of cash and built and projects being done on site, not being designed. We're not design houses, we're subcontractors and manufacturers and fabricators, and it's how we get over that what I think will turn out to be a bit of a chasm of a lack of work. It's a lot of work, but it's like in the distance. You know, there's a whole lot of design has to get done before we can start bashing metal. And I think that's our concern, really.
No, it's a valid concern because you're doing a lot of work up front without the certainty of what's going to happen after. And, you know, who's going to take on the responsibility if things get delayed and things like that. So it's a lot on the contractor, and, you know, we appreciate that. Sorry, Lawrence. What's your what do you do? What's your background?
Sorry, I'm business development director at Alumet.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
I know you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you.
Any other comments before we close out? Okay, I think we're all done. So as I said before, I can see that a lot of you have put requests in the chat for your CPD certificates and the slides, so that's absolutely fine. Anyone else, just pop it in there. So thank you all for attending, and a huge thank you to Nada for a really interesting presentation and some interesting discussion there at the end. Our next one is stone decay talk, which will be our August event on the 3rd of August. Some of you will remember that we were due to have the stone decay CPD back in March, and unfortunately our speaker was taken ill at the last minute and it got cancelled. So that's being held now in August. Details will be coming out later today if I can get myself organised, actually, on the email. So please do come and join us then. So thank you all again, and thank you, Nada, for a great presentation there.
Thank
you. We'll see you all again soon, hopefully.
Cheers, Nada. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Well done, Nada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheery bye, Suzanne, then.
Are you off all right? Yep.
Yeah,
See
I've got to
you.
go to
Take
the
care of yourself.
next
Hope
meeting.
you're soon recovered.
Yeah, no, the funny thing is at the moment, because I've scratched my glasses,
Oh, yeah.
they managed to, the opticians managed to straighten them out so I can see and I enough to read
That's
and
good.
drive. But everything's, because of one side is a bit, it's all scratched. It's making reading quite
Oh, blimey.
a challenge. Yeah,
That's all you do all day, really, isn't it?
pretty much. Yeah. So I keep closing my left eye to see what I'm. Is that right? Yes. But still, anyway, it's providing a great deal of people with a good deal of amusement, but still. Anyway.
That's not nice.
No, to be honest, that talk was really frightening, because the more I go into this Building Safety Act, the more, I mean, the lawyers are doing talks on it all the time, and it's nice to have a professional actually talking about it. I think that's been really helpful, from QSI's point of view and from their point of view, but it really is quite frightening. I mean, we're just walking into this with our eyes shut, and developers are going to find that with this 81% is just sort of, they're in limbo because they're not getting the information together or whatever. It's we live in interesting times, as Confucius said.
Yes. Well, there's always something, isn't there, though? That's the thing. You know, as you say, BIM, you know, there's always something else coming along that rocks the boat, if you like.
Actually, Nada's comments about the coordination and that subcontractor's comments about the coordination between design and construction, it goes back to what I said in Brazil, isn't it, really?
Yes.
The way the industry is formed, and what we do is so complicated, and so many people have different inputs from their own points of view.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go.
All right.
Go
Take care.
Yep, take care.
Stay upright.
Oh, that's a bit hurtful, isn't it, really? Trying to stay upright.
Well, you could say right back at you, couldn't you, after my antics in Poland? But there you go.
Well, I wouldn't be so cruel.
You wouldn't.
Anyway, no. Cheery bye. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, take care. Bye.
we do have our CPD certificate if you want that one, or if you've got a QSI one, that's absolutely fine. I can send you that template if you want. It's up to you.
We've got a QSI one.
Perfect,
I mean,
that's
if
fine.
you want
it's up to
something
you.
going out from you, and we can do it.
No,
or
that's
we could put your logo on ours, or
no, that's absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
okay,
I just thought if you wanted a template from us, that's absolutely fine. So you've got a choice, haven't you? But
Yes,
no, we're
absolutely.
happy with the QSI one. But
Okay.
we'll leave it here, and I'll speak to you later.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you take care, and thanks ever so much
Thanks.
for organising. It was
not-
great, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne.
Okay, take
Bye-bye.
care, bye.